Imagine yourself sitting in a luxurious restaurant, savoring a meal that costs more than most people's monthly rent. Then a young girl approaches you on the sidewalk asking for your leftovers. You would expect her to devour the food right there, but instead she carefully packs it and runs off without saying a word. Would you follow her? Jonathan Roumie, the world-famous actor known for portraying Jesus in the series The Chosen, not only noticed the girl, he followed her. What he discovered next would haunt him forever, making him question everything he thought he knew about faith, success, and the true meaning of compassion. That night was perfect for a lavish dinner at Golden Plate, one of the most prestigious restaurants downtown Portland. It was the kind of place where executives, celebrities, and high-profile businessmen went to unwind. Each bite of the food cost more than the weekly salary of many people. The atmosphere exuded luxury, candlelight shimmering on marble floors and the delicate sound of clinking glasses. Jonathan, then 52 years old, had been invited to a celebration dinner after a historic fundraising for a social project connected to the Chosen series. It was supposed to be a night of victory. Wearing a tailored suit, he discreetly adjusted his tie and checked messages on his phone. His name was in the spotlight, his media actions and projects were booming. But still, something bothered him. As he swirled the red wine in his glass, admiring the hypnotic color under the ambient light, he felt an emptiness. It was not physical, but existential. That kind of feeling that comes when the heart, even surrounded by applause, senses something is missing. That's when he saw her. Out of the corner of his eye, a small movement caught his attention. At first, he thought it was just another homeless person asking for help, something sadly common in big cities. But when he looked directly, he realized it was different. She was no older than 5 years. Her frail body was hidden beneath a faded yellow dress and worn sandals. Her pale face and wide eyes showed not only hunger for food, but hunger for dignity. "May I have the rest of your food, sir?" "I'm hungry," she said in a voice barely audible. The words hit Jonathan like a punch to the stomach. His first instinct was to wave down security. The elite usually avoid getting involved in cases like that, right? But there was something in the girl's eyes that froze him. Something familiar. A reminder of his own modest childhood in Queens, New York. He knew what it was like to grow up with little. And that feeling of invisibility, he knew it well. The waiter noticed the tense atmosphere and approached, ready to intervene. But Jonathan raised his hand, signaling him to do nothing. He pushed the plate with the remaining lobster and vegetables toward her. "You can take it," he said quietly. The girl's eyes widened in surprise. But unlike what Jonathan expected, she didn't devour the food right there. With almost reverent care, she placed it inside a crumpled plastic bag. "Thank you, sir," she whispered before running off down the sidewalk. Jonathan stood there staring at the empty plate. He should feel proud of himself, right? He had done something good, but something was wrong. A growing discomfort in his chest. Why didn't she eat there? Why was she in such a hurry? Where were her parents? Without thinking twice, Jonathan got up, left some bills on the table, and ignored the curious glances around him. Something inside him wouldn't let him stand still. He needed to understand. He needed to know what was going on. He stepped through the velvet curtains of the restaurant and into the cold night air. The city lights sparkled in the distance, but the streets seemed quiet. His leather shoes echoed on the wet pavement as he hurried along. Why was he doing this? What did he expect to find? That's when he saw her again. The girl was running down the street and, within seconds, entered an alley. Jonathan quickened his pace and, as he approached the entrance, stopped. What he saw made his heart nearly stop. The little girl was kneeling beside another child, a younger girl, maybe around 2 years old, lying motionless on the ground. The younger girl's lips were cracked, her skin pale and burning with fever. The older sister was trembling as she tried to wake her. "I brought food, Annie Beth. Wake up and eat your lobster. Just like Grandma used to say," she murmured with a choked voice. Jonathan knelt beside them. This was more than he could bear. It was raw, real, unfair. This was happening just a few meters from where people spent small fortunes on a single meal. Mia, as he heard the younger sister being called, cradled little Annie Beth with tears streaming down her face. "Please, wake up," she repeated, almost voiceless. It was like an emotional tsunami. Jonathan grabbed his phone with trembling hands and called emergency services. Yes, two girls. One is unconscious. They're alone. The ambulance was dispatched immediately, and at that moment Jonathan knew that night wasn't about professional victories nor celebration. It was about redemption. It was about remembering that true success isn't in applause or achievements, but in what we do when no one is watching, especially for those no one sees. When Jonathan looked at Mia Claire trying to comfort her sister, a part of him couldn't help but ask, what if I had never followed her? What if I had just gone back inside, finished my meal, and moved on with my life? But he hadn't done that, and now there was no turning back. Do you think Jonathan Roumie's decision to follow that girl was driven by guilt or by genuine concern? What does that say about the heart of someone who has lived the pain of being invisible? Jonathan's heart was pounding as he advanced down the dark alley, his thoughts spiraling. The cold air touched his face, but the chill was nothing compared to the tightness in his chest. His footsteps echoed between the narrow walls of the alley as he tried to push away the image of Mia Claire's face, the desperation in her eyes as she fled with the food. Something was wrong, and he needed to find out what it was. The alley was quieter than he expected, a place forgotten by the city, hidden in the shadow of towering buildings that seemed to completely ignore it. The streetlights barely reached that dark corner, casting only unstable pools of light. As Jonathan got closer, he saw her. Mia Claire was kneeling beside the motionless body of her younger sister, Annie Beth. The scene was like a punch in the gut. Jonathan felt his breath catch in his throat. His instincts screamed, something was terribly wrong. The little girl was pale, her lips cracked and dry, skin burning with a fierce fever that made Jonathan's stomach churn. Mia shook her gently, trying to wake her. But the child did not move. The scene before him broke his heart. It was a cold slap in the face of everything Jonathan had ever known. This can't be real, he murmured, his mind trying to process what he was seeing. Jonathan had experienced poverty before. He had endured hard times in his journey before finding his path in art, faith, and service. But this was different. These were not just two random street children. Mia Claire looked at her sister with tired resilience, with a premature maturity in her eyes, something no child should have to carry. And Annie Beth, her skin burning to the touch, was not just sick. She was dying. Jonathan finally found his voice. The words came out rough, as if he hadn't spoken in years. The little girl lifted her head, her brown eyes locked onto his, and there was no fear in them, only a deep weariness, as if she had already seen the worst life could offer, and worse expected nothing better. Jonathan knelt beside them. The expensive suit he wore to the charity event he had just left was now a distant memory. He reached out to touch Annie Beth's moist skin. His fingers stayed there for a moment before pulling back. The child's feverish heat made his heart tremble. "What happened to her?" Jonathan asked, his voice trembling. His hands shook. Mia Claire did not look away. For a moment, Jonathan could see the weight of the years on those childish shoulders, as if she had already witnessed the world's cruelty and expected no one to care. "She won't wake up," Mia whispered firmly. "It's been hours. I think she's very weak." Jonathan felt the blood drain from his face, his mind trying to piece things together. How could this be happening? So close to where he had just had dinner. A fancy restaurant, where people discussed wines more expensive than that family would ever see in their entire lives. And now, just a few meters away, two invisible girls fighting for their lives. "Please, Annie Beth, wake up," Mia Claire said, her voice shaking. "I brought food for us. Please." Jonathan's mind struggled to accept it. This couldn't be happening. He had to do something. He couldn't just stand there watching those girls vanish. But the desperation in Mia's eyes said it all. She no longer believed in help. She no longer believed in anything, except the harsh truth that no one cared. Jonathan already had his phone in hand. He dialed 911 with steady fingers, but a broken heart. The words came out with difficulty. He reported, a child in critical condition, possibly starving and neglected. The calm voice of the operator on the other end of the line did not match the storm raging inside him. When he hung up, he turned to Mia and her sister. Mia was now sitting on her heels. Her small fingers squeezed a locket she had taken from her pocket. She held it as if it were her only connection to a world that once had been warm and safe. Jonathan looked into her eyes. His gaze narrowed as he noticed the photo inside the locket. A faded image of a woman strangely familiar. "Who is she?" Jonathan asked, his voice almost a whisper. But even as the words left his lips, he already knew the answer. Grandma Mia Claire's voice came filled with emotion. She is the only one who told us stories. She is the only one who promised we wouldn't end up like this. Jonathan felt his heart leap in his chest. The woman in the photo looked so familiar, so close. Familiar? Jonathan asked, trying to control his breath. Recognition hit him like a high-speed train. The photo was of Miss Emily, the woman who had been like a mother to him when he was abandoned as a child. The same woman who taught him that even in the darkest places, there was always a spark of hope, a thread of humanity capable of transforming everything. The woman who gave him a chance at life he never dared to dream of. Reality crashed over him like a wave. Mia Claire and Annie Beth were the granddaughters of Miss Emily, the woman who saved his life all those years ago when he was just another orphan on the streets. And he had forgotten their ties, ignored their letters, buried their existence beneath the success of his career. Now the granddaughters of that woman were sitting before him, hungry, injured, waiting for someone, anyone. "I knew her," Jonathan stammered, his voice breaking with emotion. "I knew your grandmother." Mia Claire stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. "You knew her?" "I'm sorry," Jonathan said, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry for not helping her when she needed it. But I'm here now, and I will help you. I promise." The ambulance siren sounded in the distance. Jonathan felt the weight of his choices crush his shoulders. He wasn't just helping two lost girls. He was trying to make right mistakes he had ignored for years, paying a debt he only now realized existed. In the days that followed, everything became a blur. Hospital visits, phone calls, and decisions he never thought he would have to make. Mia Claire and Annie Beth were recovering now, but the damage had been deep. Annie Beth was severely malnourished. Mia, despite her resilient spirit, carried scars from neglect beyond her years. Jonathan spent every waking hour by their side at Riverside Hospital. He felt a responsibility growing inside him like a weight that would never leave him. It was overwhelming, yes, but at the same time, it was a turning point. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt something real, something deeper than any applause or achievement, more truthful than any recognition for his work as an actor. It was Mia Claire who surprised him the most. Despite all she had been through, she was not the fragile, broken child he had imagined. There was a silent strength in her, a resilience that came from a place he couldn't understand. She wasn't looking for someone to save her. She just wanted someone who would stay. "I told Grandma we'd be okay," Mia said one night, clutching the locket she always carried between her fingers, the same locket she had shown Jonathan days before. "She promised me that one day everything would get better. She said that sometimes people just need a little help, to remember the good things." Jonathan's heart tightened. There it was again, the very message Miss Emily had taught him years ago when he was just a lost boy in a foster home. Miss Emily believed in the goodness of people, and now it seemed that Mia Claire carried that belief within her, even after everything life had thrown at her. As the weeks passed, Jonathan found himself growing increasingly distant from his corporate and artistic obligations. He took a leave from his professional commitments, something unthinkable months earlier. But at that moment, it felt like the only right thing to do. Nothing was more important than those two girls, two innocent souls left to fend for themselves in a world that had turned its back on them. Jonathan worked tirelessly to ensure they had everything they needed: medical care, therapy, but above all, love. With the support of a team of professionals, including a child psychologist, the girls began to heal. Annie Beth was still fragile, but each day she showed more strength. Her eyes became brighter, her laughter more frequent. Mia Claire remained the pillar, the mother figure in a small, fragile body. But even she was beginning to learn to let go a little of the responsibility she had carried alone for so long. One night, Jonathan sat in the living room of his mansion. The girls were drawing at the table. Their laughter filled the room. Jonathan watched them, his heart torn between pride and guilt. These two girls had become his world in such a short time. The promise he had made to Miss Emily, to repay her kindness, was now more than a debt. It was his purpose. "You know," he said, watching them draw, "I think Grandma would have loved this place." Mia Claire looked up, curious. "Do you really think so?" "I know she would," Jonathan replied, his voice choking up. "I think she'd be very proud of you, too." He took a deep breath. "I promised her once that I would give back to the world the good she did for me, and I think this is my chance." Days turned into weeks, and over time, Jonathan realized he was not just a temporary guardian. He had become family. The bond formed during those first days of pain and uncertainty blossomed into something real, something undeniable. But the greatest test was yet to come. Anthony Collins, the girl's father, was still battling his demons. After an overdose, he had been admitted to a rehabilitation clinic, struggling to overcome the addiction that had devastated his life for so long. But the road to recovery was never easy. And although Jonathan Roumie had promised the girls that things would get better, he couldn't ignore the harsh reality. Anthony was still their father, and despite everything, they loved him. One morning, Jonathan received a call from Anthony's rehab center. The therapist informed him that Anthony had made significant progress and wanted to speak with Mia Claire and Annie Beth. Jonathan felt a whirlwind of emotions. He had promised the girls they would never endure the same pain again, but he also knew their father's recovery was crucial. It was a delicate balance. "Mia Claire," Jonathan said, sitting beside her on the couch, "your dad wants to talk to you. He's getting better and wants to see you." Mia's eyes shone with a mix of hope, fear, and confusion. "Do you think he'll be different?" she asked quietly. Jonathan gently took her hand. "I believe he's trying, but it's up to you to decide if you're ready to trust him again." The day of the meeting arrived. As Jonathan sat with Mia Claire and Annie Beth in the rehab clinic's visitor room, the door opened. Anthony Collins entered. His face was thinner, his eyes clearer than they had been in years. The man who had once been so broken now stood before them, trying to make up for the years lost to addiction. Annie Beth was the first to move, running into Anthony's arms, her small hands clutching his worn shirt. Mia Claire stood still for a moment, watching the reunion unfold before her. Finally, she walked up to him, her hand trembling. "I'm sorry," Anthony whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I know I failed you too, but I'm here now. I'm trying. I want to be the father you deserve." Mia Claire nodded slowly, her eyes full of hope and caution. "We want to understand you, Daddy," she said softly, "but you have to promise. Promise you won't run away again." "I promise," Anthony replied, his voice breaking. "I won't run away anymore." Jonathan watched the scene, his heart heavy with feelings he didn't even know how to name. It was a slow and painful process, rebuilding trust, healing broken relationships. But it was happening, and that was enough. How do you feel about the path Jonathan chose? He took on the role of father to the girls. Do you think he is doing the right thing? This story teaches about the deep importance of human connection, compassion, and second chances. It highlights how the choices we make, big or small, can change the course of someone's life. Jonathan Roumie's decision, known for portraying Jesus in the series The Chosen and for his unwavering faith, to step into Mia Claire and Annie Beth's lives was not just an act of charity, it was a moment of growth. He learned that true success is not measured by fame, wealth, or achievements, but by the ability to love, care, and provide support when it is most needed. Mia Claire and Annie Beth show us the resilience of the human spirit. Despite a traumatic past, they remained hopeful, proving that even in the darkest times, love and kindness can make a difference. The story also reminds us that healing, both physical and emotional, takes time, patience, and understanding. True family is not defined only by blood, but by those who choose to stay by each other's side, regardless of the circumstances. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to share this story with someone who might need a reminder about the power of second chances. Where are you watching from?